We're live. Okay.
This is my 17th. I'm more coming up this year, but
Call Finance Committee together here. We have a quorum with Thomas, Merlino, Runyon, Diamond, and Leggett present. First order of business is to approve the minutes of the prior committee meeting. Thank you, Supervisor Merlino, and second by Supervisor Runyon. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Privilege of the floor and public comment. Any private comments? Okay. We will then go on to action items. And today we are looking at insurance renewals. So with no objection from the committee here, I would like to go right on to the discussion of the insurance renewal. And I would ask Self-Insurance Director Ms. Clute to present. Thank you.
Thank you. It's this time of year when we always talk about our next year's insurance. Our insurance brokers, Arthur J. Gallagher, have been working hard on this for the last several months. And we've met with them. And I prepared a proposed resolution. It is a very fluid topic. It changed even this morning, and it may change as we discuss more. But I believe Suleim and Colin are online. They're on Zoom. And they're going to talk a little bit about the renewal process and what they're proposing for next year. So I'll turn it over to them if your guys are ready, with your permission to do that, of course.
Thanks, Amy. Can everyone hear us okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So again, Amy, thanks for the introduction. My name is Suleim Bartok, and my colleagues also on the call, Colin David. We are with Gallagher. We're the county's insurance broker for property and casualty insurance, as well as workers' compensation. And we've been working with the county and with Amy and Jen and their team since late 2019 at this point. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone let me know once I do that if everything's visible and legible and big enough?
Okay.
Can everyone see that?
Yes, it is fine print for us though.
Okay, let's see what we can do, Craig. Is that a little better?
I'll let the committee. Well, we have two screens here, so on one of them it is larger than the other. So we have three screens actually. How can the committee see things well there from the one on the wall? Okay.
either can I.
No. We might need to bump it up a little bit more, Suleim.
Okay. How about that?
How's that looking? Let's start with that, and then if you can highlight as you go through, shake the cursor so people can see.
Sure, yeah. So just to kind of set the stage for everyone, what we'll do here is we're gonna go through the three options really that are on the table for the county as far as next year's insurance program. Again, property, casualty, and workers' comp. The reason there are three options is because there were some changes that the county's current carrier, or at least the carrier that currently insures the bulk of the county's program, some changes that they put forth, deductible changes, rate changes in the premiums, changes in the limits they're offering, that really forced us to have to go out into the marketplace, something that we already did last year, but we're forced to do again this year because we want to ensure that we're doing our due diligence, and I think Amy and Jennifer were of the same mindset in ensuring that the county was getting the best deal for its program. So that said, we have three options on the table. One is from the county's incumbent carrier and carriers, and then two are from a new carrier. And ultimately, as we go through it, you'll see one of those two options is the carrier we're recommending the county move to. So what I'll do here is you'll see on the left here, these are all the lines of coverage that the county currently buys. So there's property, general liability, auto liability, law enforcement, public officials, and you can go down workers' comp, cyber. So as opposed to going through everything line by line, what I'll do is I'll just highlight the big changes in coverage that were again put forth by the incumbent carrier, and then the pricing of the total program as a whole, because ultimately I know that that's what matters relative to the budget itself. So I'll scroll down here. Can everyone see this right here? Total annual premiums, 1.013 million.
You may want to blow that up a little bit.
Okay. How's that?
Good.
Okay. So this is this premium cost. That's what the county is currently paying for its entire insurance program, 1.013 million. Now, this is again, this entire column here is your expiring program. As you can see, if I scroll to the left a bit, this number right here, this number is the number that was quoted by the county's incumbent carrier, which is Zurich for the county's program. And the increase year over year is about 17.29%. So again, quite a substantial increase in cost, along with some major coverage changes that we'll get into in a second here. But because of that increase, again, we went out and worked with a variety of different carriers to try to obtain a proposal that was competitive from both a coverage and much more competitive from a cost standpoint. Any questions so far? No, okay. Okay, so coverage changes that I'd like to point out, I think are important to discuss, and I know Larry, I think you might opine on a couple of them, but there's really three major coverage changes that your current carrier Zurich put forth this year that are changing. One of those changes is the deductible levels for your professional lines of coverage, right? So professional lines of coverage is three lines. It's law enforcement liability, public officials liability, and employment practices liability. Those three lines of coverage, the deductibles that were quoted by Zurich increased from 50,000 to 100,000. So essentially doubling the retained limit that the county has to bear per claim. The second big change was that Zurich quoted an increased deductible for auto physical damage claims. So currently the county has a $500 deductible on some vehicles, a $2,500 deductible on other vehicles. Zurich quoted on their renewal proposal a $5,000 auto physical damage deductible across the board. So again, a major change, and I know, it might not seem like a lot, but on a per claim basis, the county is now responsible for double what it used to be. And it's a big change. And I will say that change specifically was it was specific to Warren County. You know, we, Gallagher, we're a, you know, the largest public sector in the broker in the country. We work with about 200 other public sector clients in New York State. And these carriers we work with, they vary on what they do account by account. This was specific to Warren County because of the frequency of auto claims. That's an issue that the county deals with pretty consistently and has been dealing with, and something that our team, along with Amy's team, are working to try to mitigate. And then the third big coverage change is the limit for sexual abuse liability coverage, right? And so obviously this coverage, it applies to the county itself, but also the county's entire operation. So the jail, the foster care, the nursing home, everything. Currently, the county has an $11 million aggregate limit for sexual abuse liability. That limit, subject to Zurich's proposal, would be going down to $6 million. So Zurich cut that limit, almost in half in their renewal proposal. And that's a measure that we've seen not only with Zurich, but we've seen with a lot of the carriers that we work with. That sexual abuse liability, especially in New York State, is really, really hard to obtain because carriers are beginning to shy away from it, with the statute being lifted and the various laws that are that have been put in place. It's a huge exposure for carriers, and they don't feel that it's worth insuring for them to the same degree that they used to. So a lot of these carriers are sublimiting the amount of coverage they want to offer as a way to hedge their exposures. So again, I'll pause there. Those are the three major changes. Before I move on, any questions on anything that was covered so far?
Committee have any questions? Hearing none. Salim, carry on.
Okay. So this is option one, and I should point out, sorry, the last bit is Zurich is excluding coverage for the county's balloon festival, which I know happens once a year. So there again, these are all changes under this option one, which is the Zurich option. Now I'll scroll over to option two. Did everyone see that, the 1.101 million?
Are you scrolled all the way over now?
Yes, it's right here in the middle.
Got it.
This is option two, and this option is with Travelers. Okay, so Travelers is the carrier that we're presenting for both options 2 and 3. We'll get into the differences between those two options, but Travelers is a carrier that they're a prominent carrier, obviously very well known nationally in New York State. They do a lot of public entity business. They were by far the most competitive carrier that we worked with throughout this marketing process, and really the only carrier that offered us a competitive quote. So under the Travelers option, option 2, what we did was, we had Travelers quote most of the program, but Travelers said, we'll only give you $3 million in abuse coverage, right? Going back to what I mentioned prior, which was carriers are really sublimiting that coverage because it's a big exposure for them. They said, we'll only give you $3 million in abuse coverage. So what we had to do is we had to go out and get another carrier to sit over Travelers, an umbrella carrier that would provide us another $2 million in abuse coverage. So essentially that brings up your abuse limit to $5 million under this option. So this option, again, $5 million in abuse coverage relative to the 6 you would get with Zurich. However, the pros, which in our opinion are big pros, are that Travelers is willing to maintain your current deductible levels for professional lines, right? So law enforcement, public officials, and employment practices. They're willing to maintain those deductibles at $50,000, which is what they currently are. In addition to that, the deductibles for auto physical damage would also stay at the current levels, which is 500 for some vehicles and 2,500 for other vehicles. And then the last piece, which is also important, is that Travelers has agreed to include coverage for the balloon festival. So under this option, coverage for that festival would be afforded, whereas with Zurich, when that festival comes around, we would have to go out and place a standalone special events policy to cover liability for that festival, which can cost anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 in additional premium. Now, the thing to point out about this option that I'll scroll up for is the umbrella carrier that we're in talks with to give us that additional $2 million in abuse coverage that would get us up to $5 million. Their layer, for their layer, they're charging $250,000, right? So in essence, you're paying $250,000 for an additional $2 million in sexual abuse liability. Now, when I scroll to option 3 here, and this is the final option, you can see there's no layer here for the additional sexual abuse liability. So if I go down to the bottom, option 3 is the exact same option as option 1, with the exception of that additional layer of sexual abuse liability. So you'd still have the same $50,000 deductibles for professional liability, the same $500 and $2,500 deductibles for auto physical damage claims, and you would still have coverage for the balloon festival. Everything would remain the same. You would just be choosing not to purchase that additional layer of sexual abuse liability. So instead of $5 million in total limit for sexual abuse liability, you would instead have 3. And again, I'll pause there because everyone can see the cost here. The cost is much, much less than both option 1 and 2. And actually, year over year, the county would be saving about $250,000, and your upfront premiums would go down 16.4%.
And the total for that is $847,163.
That's correct, right? Yep. As compared to what you're currently paying, which is 1.03.
Is that clear to the committee, the 3 options here? And most specifically between the renewal program option 2 and 3.
Can I just make a clarification? Their option 3 that Suleim is showing on the board, that is after a conversation that occurred yesterday afternoon. So you don't see it on the sheet that you have in front of you, because I see you might be looking for it. So the difference is, correct me if I'm wrong, the only difference to that is the $250,000 Hudson policy that is included in the final columns on the sheet you have in front of you. That's the difference between the two that brought it down to the $847,163. So it's the 16.41 reduction in cost. I didn't know if everybody could.
Right.
Thank you, Tammy.
Yeah,
Sure.
and we have a comment from county attorney.
I just wanted to clarify part of the summary you just provided, if I could.
Sure.
For 2023, the upcoming year, and in Zurich's package, is there any coverage for sexual abuse liability? Or are they excluding all coverage for 2023 for sexual abuse liability?
As part of Zurich's package, Larry,
That's correct.
there is $6 million in abuse coverage for Zurich's package. So if you're looking at the 3 options, again, the 3 renewal options, option 1, which is the Zurich package, you get $6 million in abuse coverage. Option 2, which is the Travelers plus Hudson package, you get $5 million in abuse coverage. And then option 3, which is obviously the most cost-effective option, which is just travelers, you get $3 million in abuse coverage, along with the other discrepancies I mentioned. And to the committee, those documents that you have in front of you, Amy, I assume are from the meeting we all had. So they're not as fresh as this spreadsheet. So we apologize for that. So I would, if there's any questions, I would just ask that that you reference this spreadsheet that's being shown, and we can circulate this spreadsheet after the meeting.
Thank you for the clarification. I was under the impression Zurich was not providing coverage for sexual abuse liability in 2023. So I appreciate you clarifying that.
Sure thing, Larry.
And if I may turn to the county attorney, since you deal with these cases, what's your feeling about the coverage?
What I immediately focused in yesterday on when we reviewed this package by Zoom was the fact that the traveler's option, which added Hudson as an excess coverage for an additional $2 million on top of the $3 million, cost an incredible amount of money to the county, $250,000. So when we're talking about the difference between option 2 and option 3, which is travelers plus the Hudson excess coverage versus the travelers alone, it seemed to me, one, that we didn't need Hudson to provide an additional amount of coverage over and above the 11 million for all the other claims in that group. And that there was a decision to be made on whether we needed to spend that money just to get that additional 2 million of coverage on the sex abuse liability claims that occur in 2023, because that's what this covers. We have an occurrence-based policy. And whether that was the best use of resources and taxpayer funding, or if there's an alternative that the county could commit to moving forward to between now and the full board meeting. And that proposal would be for purposes of sex abuse claims, either in 23 or in the future, creating a self-reserve fund dedicated for that purpose in lieu of that $250,000 premium, which increases and provides excess from 3 million to 5 million. And I can talk in more detail on pros and cons. But I'll pause there if there's any comments or questions. And I guess let me go back to the starting point. The starting point is with the increase in deductibles on Zurich and the higher cost across the board on Zurich, I'm hard pressed how I would recommend that coverage. If there are 1 or 2 claims in 2023 that exceed $100,000, the county now is paying twice as much as we have in past years, because it's $100,000 self-retention as compared to a $50,000 self-retention. It's just how much, so we're on the hook for more and the premium's higher as compared to what Travelers has proposed. So, I leave it to the discretion of the committee between those two, but that's why I'm limiting my discussion really to the options that are presented as 2 and 3, which is Travelers plus that Hudson additional coverage versus going with just travelers alone and the commitment to have a self-insurance fund for future claims in the area of sex abuse. Those premiums are just going to keep going up on the sex abuse liability coverage, given what the state of New York and the legislature has done to change the underlying law in that area. And I'm specifically talking about this, the amazing and drastic change in the statute of limitations and the ability of individuals to bring claims against municipalities, against anybody. It used to be a 3-year window after the 18th birthday. It's now a window until that child turns 55. So I can only work off of what the law is today, and that's what the law is today, and I have to believe it'll be that way into the future, which means individuals who are in the system at the age of 2 or 3 or 4, somewhere in the state of New York, have until their 55th birthday to lodge a lawsuit claiming sexual abuse against responsible parties, which could include the county. There's a much deeper evaluation in that area I can provide, but I don't want to get too deep. Absent the desire of the committee to hear it, but it's part of the reason I believe we're going to be better served in the much longer run, having a self-insurance fund which picks up and covers that difference, which means we got to fund it now and start the process of funding it now, but it can sit if and when we receive those claims and those claims pierce the base coverage amount, which for 2023 is 3 million and 3 million. 3 million per occurrence, 3 million aggregate for the year.
Larry, can I chime in real quick?
Sure. We also have a question from Supervisor Runyon first.
Please.
Am I correct in assuming to pay the $250,000 for those cases would only cover cases brought during that time period, 2023? And then each year we'd be paying that same amount, whereas if we put the 250,000 aside, started a fund like you were talking about, that money's available for future use as well, right?
I can clarify, and then if anyone else wants to jump on, that's fine. That premium, in theory, provides the county coverage for any claims that occurred in 2023, any sexual abuse claims that occurred in 2023. And in theory, the county has that additional coverage over the $3 million until that minor child hits their 55th birthday, if the law remains unchanged. So assuming no prices go up, that would be a payment every year that the county would make to get additional premium coverage or additional coverage over 3 million for 2024 claims, 2025 claims.
Every year.
There's cause and effect, and the legislature's actions have definitely had an effect on the municipality, not just in lawsuits we're now defending, but lawsuits that are going to be lodged well into the future. And I guess I'll stop there for now. I'm not sure if Solomon or Colin have anything they wanted to add. Correct? Please correct if I said anything that's off or misleading.
No, Larry, that was spot on, and actually to the supervisor that asked the question, that's exactly what I was going to touch on, which is that premium for that policy would be a claims made policy with a retroactive date at inception. So what that means is you're paying for coverage starting 1/1/23 and forward. So if the county decides to make the change to either of the travelers options, the county would not be losing coverage retroactively. Okay, so The county's current coverage is 10 million for sex abuse claims and has been for quite some time. So if there's a claim that's made in 2023, 2024, 2025, whenever it is, that's made, but the incident that's alleged occurred prior to 1/1/23, the county would still have $11 million of sex abuse coverage. And Zurich would still be the carrier for those claims. So I just wanted the board to be clear on that you're not giving up coverage retroactively. It would just be on a go forward basis, and that this new policy is with the excess policy with Hudson would only cover claims that were reported and that the incident alleged occurred 1/1/23 and on.
I just want to make sure I'm clear because I'm a little bit off now and I apologize. I want to be really clear that the travelers policy, the proposal from travelers is an occurrence-based policy, similar to what we have in 2022 and prior years. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
In the Hudson proposed policy for the additional coverage, that's also occurrence-based, which means any claims that are alleging conduct in 2023 would be covered by the Hudson policy because it's also an occurrence-based policy. Is that not correct, or is that correct?
No, that's not correct, Larry. So that the Hudson policy is different than the traveler's policy in that it's a claims made policy with a retro date at inception, which means, again, that there's only coverage for claims made on a go forward basis effective to the January 1st of 2023.
So, for example, the county has served a lawsuit on January 2nd of 2023 for a sexual abuse claim that occurred anywhere in the past within the statute of limitations, whatever decade that is, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s. Our prior insurance carrier is covering the occurrence-based claim, which means whoever gave us coverage for those years is the carrier that is going to be, that's our coverage for that claim. And Hudson then is picking up the additional $2 million over and above because the claim was filed or the lawsuit was filed in 2023, right?
No, because the incident, if the incident alleged was occurred, let's say, Larry, in 1980, Hudson is not providing, would not be providing coverage over and above whatever carrier was in place in 1980.
I apologize because maybe I'm the only one in the room who's missing it. Is the Hudson policy for claims when they're made coverage or for occurrence-based coverage? You understand what I'm asking?
Yeah. Do you want me to chime in, Celine?
Go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, so you are correct, Larry. It is claims made coverage. However, there is what's known as a retroactive date on the Hudson policy, meaning it'll start doing on a go forward basis on 1/1/2023.
All
So
right.
anything before that, it doesn't apply to. And going forward, it would be on a claims made basis.
And I apologize to each of you and to the committee because I made an assumption during our conversation yesterday and I didn't ask the question. So thank you for clarifying it.
Sure thing.
That $250,000 premium and that $2 million of coverage ends on December 31st of 2023, correct?
Assuming, yet Larry, assuming that the policy also ends and you choose not to purchase it again.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, based on that, from just the legal defense perspective, I question the value of that Hudson policy if the county is prepared to commit substantially upfront and over a period of years funding a self-reserve. which ideally would hit $2 million at some point over a course of years. Let me be specific. I don't think $250,000 is the right number to start with on that self-reserve. But it certainly doesn't have to be a full 2 million either to start it. I think that would be the goal, the aspirational goal to work towards over a period of maybe 3 to 5 years.
If I may help summarize this, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, for the Hudson coverage, for $250,000, we get $2 million of insurance for the calendar year for the term of the plan. And for any occurrence that would happen during those 365 days.
Any claim that's made for, yes, for any occurrence and claim that occurs this year.
Correct. And then in 2024, we could renew a policy and it would take care of any occurrence that happened in 2024 and so on.
The one difference would be that in 2024, if you renewed the coverage, you would have the same $2 million limit from 2023 going forward. So as many times you renew the coverage, that $2 million limit is going to stay in place and be shared for every year going forward.
Okay.
Which is why we also are recommending option 3, and if you're able to start the self-insurance fund.
Right. And just to piggyback off what Colin said, we're in total agreement with Larry and I think Amy and the rest of the team in that we think that the county's money is better suited and the savings you would retain by going with option 3, but in forming a self-insurance fund that is dedicated to the potential for sexual abuse claims, and in just looking at, and to Larry's point earlier, you know, whether it's 250, 2 million, whatever the number is, just looking at the premium for option 3, which is 847,000, relative to what was budgeted this for fiscal year 23 by the county, which is 1.213 million, and that's down here in the notes section. You know, we're talking about a difference of $350,000, which has already been budgeted for, and that money, in theory, could be used to be the catalyst to begin that self-insurance fund and that line item within the county's budget, and ultimately is what our recommendation is. You know, knowing that you know, it's completely up to the county and it's the county's business what to do with that leftover money should you go with that option, but that's our recommendation point of view.
As the county attorney, I would be hard pressed to recommend that option 3, which is not having that additional coverage, even though I'm not enamored by that coverage, without having the start and commitment to fund that self-insurance fund going forward. I don't think that's fair to future generations of the board or the public in Warren County. It leaves us exposed to an unknown liability, which is why we've had insurance coverage that has covered this for decades.
So again, to clarify for my purpose here, what you just stated, Attorney Ellman, you do support the establishment of a self-insurance fund for sexual abuse cases. And you do or recommend that we proceed with the extra coverage for Hudson at this time.
No, that we do not proceed with the extra coverage for Hudson. So really option 3 has 2 parts. One is that it's just the traveler's package without the Hudson coverage and the clear commitment to fund and protect that self-insurance fund
Yes, Supervisor Runyon.
So am I right in assuming that if the total budgeted premium, they're talking about our budget amount is 1,213,458? And if we go with option 3, we'd be saving, we'd have left in our budget 366,295. So it wouldn't be hard to stay within the budget and put 250,000 away.
Correct. Budget officer, any comment on that?
Yep, that's what I would do. Option 3 and put the 366 and 95 in the reserve.
Take the whole thing.
Director Clute, is there a problem setting up or what would it take to set up for a reserve?
I am unsure of how to set that up, but I certainly will work on that in the coming weeks before the board meeting. And I also would check with the budget team to get that final number of what was put in and what this will be as we narrow this down before the board meeting, if that's okay. And add that to the resolution request.
I would look carefully to the county treasurer for his guidance as well on establishing that to make sure it's safeguarded as well from future boards.
That it is a dedicated capital reserve for this specific purpose.
It's not that difficult to set. It's a budget amendment, basically. It'll have to be done in 23.
Okay.
It's not that difficult though.
Any permissive referendum for that kind of capital reserve, or is this all internal? Okay, thank you. Yeah. Representatives from Gallagher, any other further comments or so? And I will look at the committee here. Is the committee comfortable with option 3 with the establishment of a self-insurance reserve for sexual abuse cases and funding that around the area of 250,000?
If I could just recommend a clarity point for occurrences on or after January 1st of 2023. That this fund should not be a fund for the current lawsuits that are pending. It's coverage in lieu, it's a fund in lieu of insurance premiums and insurance coverage going forward, not retroactively. So it would be as of January
Okay.
1st, 2023 claims or occurrences.
And the rationale for that is because we're going with a lesser coverage starting in 2023.
Correct.
And we need to make up that difference. Okay. Oh, good. Well, Salim and Colin, looks like we have consensus on option 3 with that reserve. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I have one final comment, Craig, and this is to the entire board. I'd like to applaud the board on this decision and kind of coming to this consensus. And I say that because Larry mentioned this earlier, and he's completely right. But this coverage, again, especially in New York State, the sexual abuse liability coverage is only, in our estimation, is only going to become increasingly difficult to obtain and increasingly expensive. So by beginning this process this year and setting aside a budgeted amount of money year after year, I think the county is setting itself up as well as its taxpayers up for financial stability within its budget and protecting itself financially.
I'll address the Director Clute. Your recommendations?
I would agree with both of the gentlemen. The only thing I might add is the resolution that I requested has the Hudson on it, so we'll want to cross that off before you take action on it. And if you want to change the total payment to the broker, I would suggest like 855,000. We add a little bit into what they're estimating to adjust for changes. If we bought a bunch of cars at the sheriff, after we gave them the schedules that they rated it on, the renewal could actually come in a little higher because of that. So I usually add 5,000 to 6,000 onto that number, just to make sure we have enough money for our auditor to process those payments. So
And I also have one extra question here because we do, the last two items here, we are covering for the Warren, Washington County IDA. And that was discussed at our meeting the other day. And Amy, you looked into some of that. Who did that?
I looked into some history on that. Mr. Ellman is going to review, I believe, the policies with the broker to make sure we believe there may be duplicate coverage. And if that's the case, we can knock this number down. I think it was about 11,000 more.
Right.
And I believe, I'm not seeing the whole chart, but there's a national flood insurance protection program for the soil and water billing that's included in this. It's about $4,000. Travelers will be covering that, so we'll be able to knock it down a little bit more. So that's some of the reasons that I ask for it to not to exceed on the resolution is just to give us that flexibility. These renewal bills actually don't come usually until towards the end of January.
Questions from the committee? Any comments? We would be looking for a resolution as presented before you, and it's in the addendum, and that's down at the end of the table. So thank you.
On the end of the table.
Thank you, ma'am. So on the addendum, resolution request form number 20 miscellaneous renewal of property and casualty insurance for 2023 attached. Previous resolution, 578 of 2021. The funding for this would come from various departments. And you'll have here on a chart with the broker insurance and total payment to broker not to exceed. And it was written out here for 1111 500, 1,111,500. Shall we reduce that at this point in time to the 855? Director Klute, is that what you're comfortable with? Or would you like to have more on this?
I think the 855 will do. And we need to cross off the last line, the Hudson excess, because you're not going to authorize purchasing that.
Okay,
This is the authority to pay Arthur J. Gallagher. So leaving it at the 101,111,000 because you want to take that money and put it somewhere else, I don't think would help you. Because we're going to have to come back with some other sort of resolution based on
Right.
whatever you guys all tell me to do. Yeah, I think the 855 we'll go with that. With the changes, we should be okay. If not, I'll be back to you about February.
we'll be here. Thank you. A motion to bring that to the floor then. Thank you, Supervisor Runyon, second by Supervisor Diamond. Discussion? Hearing none, I'll call. Oh,
Just a quick question. Is there the ability to add an amendment that the difference will be dedicated to the self-insurance fund? Because the issue won't come back to this committee until January, and it's going to be look and feel different potentially in January. I don't know if that's appropriate or not. I just asked the question.
Yeah, I would need help on answering that question. I would imagine that we need to come back with the nuts and bolts of establishing the reserve for it and with the funding stream, and all of us being aware here of the reasoning behind that. I would think that could also move forward and adjust the budget accordingly. So,
Thank you.
yeah. And if that's incorrect on that, please correct me right now. Otherwise, if there's no further discussion, I'll call the question for the renewal of the property and casualty insurance for 2023 at an amount not to exceed $855,000 and without the carrier, the Hudson carrier. And we'd be picking up by everything that's listed here for Travelers, Allied, AIG, Old Republic, Assurance, and Midwest. We good? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? None? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Slim and Colin and your team, thank you very much for all the work that you put into this. It's a lot of work and we just get the final product. So thank you. We appreciate that. And also Director Clute, great job, providing something, another huge cost savings to the county in this year. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
While we're on the addendum here, we have one other, this is a referrals from the Public Works Committee. And it's for the Department of Public Works. And this was a request to appropriate $40,000 from Budget Code A909 unappropriated surplus to Budget Code 9901, so on transfers to road machinery to cover the cost of auto supplies and repairs for the remainder of the year, and the request to amend the county budget in the amount of $40,000 in accordance with appropriation of funds authorized in item 2A. Yes,
So these two items replace what is on the big agenda as item 11C. The treasurer's office indicated this one request needed to be split into, essentially, we're taking funds and moving them from the A code to the DM code. So it takes two steps to get them there. So 2A and B kind of go together and they replace item 11C on the main agenda. And that's all, those forms were all directed by Rob Lynch.
yeah, I'm glad you caught that. It's always easier than coming back later.
Right.
So, good job. Motion to bring to the floor. Supervisor Thomas, Supervisor Diamond on second, discussion,
That 2A and B.
2A and B, but correct, yes. No discussion, call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, action items, request for transfers of funds as attached for committee approval. Motion to bring that to the floor. Supervisor Runyon. Supervisor Diamond, thank you. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to item 2, request to be discussed by the county administrator. Journal report of transfers approved by the county administrator. Any questions on those? Don't need approval from the committee. Thank you. On behalf of the Office of Community Service, there's a request to amend the Warren County budget for 2022. An amount of $412,668 for the expenditure of ARPA funds to address COVID-19 related behavioral health impacts and to expand and improve the behavioral health services for Warren County. Now, we do have, how would the committee like to do this? We have ARPA. Is that all for ARPA, those three? Yeah. Yeah, B, C, and D. C being new contract with People USA to utilize ARPA funds. And also, again, on D, Office of Community Services to authorize contract with the Warren Washington Association of Mental Health to utilize ARPA funds. Can we bring B, C, and D together? Okay, thank you. Supervisor Thomas on first and on a second. Supervisor Runyon, discussion. Hearing none, call the question. All those in favor of 2B, C, and D say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're on to 2E, the request to appropriate $406,761.83 from general fund unappropriated surplus to the sheriff's budget to cover the cost of year 1 of the sheriff's office contract with Axon Enterprises for body worn cameras, tasers, and technical support. Motion to bring to the floor for discussion. Supervisor Molino with Supervisor Runyon on the second. This is something that had gone through the treasurer's office to make sure it aligns correctly. Anybody want to speak of this this amount that's before us? Okay, Treasurer Swan. Thank you.
Morning, and I've already talked to the sheriff about this briefly this morning. But this is, just so everybody understands, this is a $1.2 million contract over the next 5 years. It's not just the 400,000. And there are grants out there that cover a lot of this type of equipment and so forth. And I just want to make sure that all of those avenues are pursued, because this is, if we can get grant money, that's obviously going to save the taxpayers some money. So and I unfortunately didn't get to talk to the sheriff until this morning about it. So I'm not sure exactly where he's at with trying to secure grants, but I just felt like it was my duty to at least bring that up, that we can. And I'm not against the cameras. I'm not against any of it. I think it's an excellent idea. Don't get me wrong. I'm just looking to save the taxpayers some money if we can in the long run. Thank you.
Okay, don't go yet. And just to explain, because we were talking at a different yearly amount for a number of years, and now it has changed. So we have up fronted certain costs.
Yeah, what we did is that rather than the original agreement was to over the 5 years was to spread the cost of the equipment over 5 years. That creates kind of an accounting problem for us. So we asked the company if they could front the equipment cost in the first payment. And then the next 4 years worth of payments would be at a smaller rate, because those are more for the software and the backup and the maintenance and everything else that's required, insurance for broken ones and those type of things. And so that's why the original cost was adjusted upward to cover the cost of the equipment in the first year.
And the total 5 year, it remains the same.
Yeah, I think it went down a little bit. I can't remember, but it's roughly 1.2 million for the entire contract.
Thank you, Treasurer Swan. Any questions for the treasurer? Sheriff, would you like to speak to this?
Yes. Treasurer Swan did inquire this morning, and we've already made 3 applications now for grant funding for body worn cameras. The first 2, we did not receive an award. 1, we weren't considered rural enough as a county, so we didn't qualify. The second involved the Native American reservation territories, so we did not qualify for that. The third, the application is due by tomorrow, and we've submitted twice. The first time we submitted, we didn't get sufficient confirmation. We resubmitted, our grant application is in. The maximum award for the 82 units for body worn cameras for this New York State grant is $164,000. It's unknown whether we'll receive that or not, but if we do receive the 164, I would think either for 2023 or subsequent years, we could utilize that funding to offset the budget and make our payments out of the county taxpayers less. I would not recommend that we delay or wait any further with going forward with the agreement. And speaking with the representatives from Axon, the 2023 pricing is going to increase by 10 to 15% at a minimum, with what he described as a 4% accelerator for subsequent years that would cover inflation. So he said a very safe estimate our agreement would increase by at least $250,000 if we waited and went into this agreement in calendar year 2023.
Any questions for the sheriff? None?
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Okay, any further discussion from the committee? Hearing none, I'll call the question on 2E to appropriate $406,761 from budget from the unappropriated surplus for the Axon body worn cameras. This is for the first year of 5 years. The other years are about 200 and was 71.
It's going to be in the next resolution.
There it is. Thanks. Okay, so I'll call the question for 2E. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Under 2F. That we have here, request to amend existing contract to change the amount for years 1 and the amounts for years 2023 through 2026. Bring it to the floor. Supervisor Runyon and a second by Supervisor Diamond. Thank you. Questions, discussion? Hearing none, call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 2G, request to appropriate funds in the amount of $78,662 from the vehicle reserves to the various department budgets to cover cost of vehicle purchases. Motion to bring it to the floor, Supervisor Molino, Supervisor Runyon. Discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And Julie, before we just voted on it, but this was all through bid. This was,
For the vehicles?
Yeah.
We actually did a bid through OGS, through the mini bid, through the marketplace. So yeah, we received 3 bids for the electric vehicles and we received 1 bid for a hybrid. So that's what we're gonna purchase for this year.
it's started, doesn't it?
It does.
Okay, thank you, Julie. 2H, request to authorize an agreement with Warren County Soil Water Conservation District to assume the duties as hazard mitigation coordinator and appointing Jim Lebrum, the Soil Water District Manager, as a hazard mitigation coordinator effective January 1st, 2023. Supervisor Molino, Supervisor Runyon on the second. Questions? Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 2I, request to amend resolution 358 of 2022 to include the new lease account codes established by the county treasurer. This is in response to the GASB 87. So motion to bring to the floor. Supervisor Thomas, Supervisor Runyon on second. And this is really just to clean things up on the language.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then on behalf of the Board of Elections, request to ratify grant application and authorize the chairman of the board with regard to executing the agreement with the New York State Board of Elections for the purpose of providing funding to assist with expenses related to postage. Bring it to the floor. Supervisor Thomas, second Supervisor Diamond. Questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Under number 3, this is from the county treasurer. Request for transfer of funds amongst various budget codes totaling $235,196 to be in accordance with the GASB 87 leases. Motion to bring it to the floor for discussion. Supervisor Runyon, Supervisor Thomas on the second, Treasurer Swan, you have the floor.
This is not we're not looking for new money. Basically, because of GASB 87, we have to move money out of individual department accounts that have leases and put it into these specially designated lease accounts for the GASB 87 requirements. So we're just moving money around to comply. That's it.
And so these are new account codes you've created.
These
for
are the
this?
new account codes that we created last month.
Okay.
Or that you just basically approved, so that we have those accounts now. Now we can move the money in so that we can pay the leases.
Okay, and that includes, you've separated out for principal and interest on these.
Yep.
Just like bonds or whatever, you know?
Yeah, this is just, to me, it's just, well, I'm not gonna say anything. Yeah, we just need.
Interesting. We had been tracking them well enough, though, up to this point, haven't we?
Yes, but now according to GASB 87, we have to track them even better, so.
Okay. Was there any particular reason that the GASB came out with this?
Job justification?
Okay. Yeah. Or we go. Well, we have a motion and a second on 3A. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Treasurer Swan.
Thank you.
Yeah. On 4, these are from county facilities. Request to increase capital projects for the airfield guidance sign replacement and the amount of $13,104. Motion bring it to the floor. Supervisor Runyon, Supervisor Thomas on the second. Discussion? No discussion. Call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 4B, request to authorize county treasurer to close cap project 369, the guidance sign replacement with no estimated funds remaining. Could have done those, I guess, together. Yeah, we have Runyon and Thomas on the second there. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 4C, request to amend the budget for 2022 to appropriate $20,000 from the general fund unappropriated surplus to budget code A5610.860 airport DPW hospitalization. So our end of year hospitalization removals there, Supervisor Runyon and Supervisor Thomas on the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Criminal Justice, Public Safety, Office of Emergency Services. 5A is a request to appropriate $2,525 from general fund unappropriated surplus to fire prevention and control retirees hospitalization to cover budget deficit and anticipate funding needs through December 31, 2022. Let's see, is there salaries? Okay, yeah. Motion to bring 5A to the floor. Supervisor Runyon, Supervisor Thomas. Questions? Call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None. Motion carries. 5B from Sheriff's Office. Request to amend the county budget in the amount of $28,412 to appropriate funds into Sheriff's law enforcement salaries overtime from revenue collected for dedicated patrol services to the Village of Lake George and Six Flags Great Escape during the 2022 summer fall season. And just as they say here, this request did not go before Criminal Justice Public Safety for approval. And I think that was a matter of timing. We just received this the other day. Is that correct, Sheriff?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Molino on first, Supervisor Runyon on second. Discussion. Call the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And Sheriff, we were able to cover those contracts well enough with Lake George Village and Six Flags. Good. Okay, we'll go on to number 6, referrals from economic growth. Thank you, Sheriff. From economic growth and development. 6A is a request to amend the county budget in the amount of $71,715.86 to allocate funds to transfer account. Let's see, can we? Yeah.
On A, you're transferring the money to the transfer account, and then B and C are increasing capital projects with those funds.
With those funds. Let's bring all B and C, A, B, and C together. Thank you, Supervisor Thomas, second by Supervisor Runyon. Thank you. Any discussion? We'll take 6A, B, and C. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. Then from the Department of Workforce Development, we need to amend being asked to amend the Warren County budget in the amount of $6,840 to reflect the receipt of Y Reconnect's grant funding with an agreement with the Probation Department for employment mentoring services. Bring it to the floor. Supervisor Thomas, Supervisor Diamond on a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. How are we doing? Anybody want to take a break? We're halfway through.
Let's keep rolling.
Okay. On to number 7 here, referrals from the Health Services Committee. 7A is a request to amend the budget for 2023 in the amount of $281,537 to allow for the expenditure of opioid settlement funds to address impacts of the opioid crisis in Warren County. Supervisor Thomas, Supervisor Merlino on the second. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? None. Motion carries. And then from Public Health, we have request to amend the Warren County budget for this year. 56,404 to reflect receipt of additional funding from New York State Department of Health for healthcare workers bonus program. Motion to bring this to the floor. Supervisor Diamond, Supervisor Merlino on the second. Discussion. And I'll look over to the assistant to the county administrator here. These were the state opened this up. We apply every quarter. Is that what's allowed?
Yeah, it's a mandated program.
Yep.
Through Medicaid, so certain employees based upon their titles qualify.
Yep.
So there's an online portal that they have to enter the data into the treasurer's department. Treasurer's department is very helpful in just reviewing the employees. For employees, they will verify the hours that the employees work, because based upon the number of hours they you qualify for different levels of those payments. These payments come through their Medicaid payment for health services and have to go directly out to the employees. These are the bonus payment. They've reported 2 cycles thus far. I know one payment's been made. They're waiting on the second payment.
Good, thank you. Any further discussion? Supervisor Molina?
See the same thing?
That's,
It is not.
that is different there. So call the question for 7B. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 7C, this is to amend the budget in 2022 for 159,000 to reflect the receipt of a district funding for the home care division. Motion to bring it to the floor. Supervisor Runyon, Supervisor Molino. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 8, referrals from Human Services. First one is Countryside Adult Home. This is amending the budget of 2022 for $26,987 to reflect receipt of the Equal Award from New York State Department of Health. Supervisor Thomas, Supervisor Diamond, discussion. Call. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 8, B, and C are from the Department of Social Services. One is the request to amend the budget of 2022 for $4,167 to reflect the receipt of allocation of 22 OCFS LCM 27. And then C is to amend the budget for 2023 in the amount of $45,833 to reflect the receipt of allocation of the same item. Can we bring 8, B, and C together? Yes. Supervisor Runyon and second by Supervisor Thomas. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. Referral from the Tax Coordinating Committee to appropriate funds in the amount of $274,800 from reserve occupancy tax to Tourism Warren County projects to provide funding for a contract with Hood Communications for Lake George TV, LGTV. Motion to bring to the floor. Supervisor Runyon, a second. Supervisor Thomas, discussion. No discussion, call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
1 opposed, 1 abstentions, 3 in favor. And that fails.
Can I provide a legal observation and comment? And we may want to go into executive session, as that's going to be attorney-client communications. I'm more than, committee wants to waive attorney-client privilege, we can, but it's going to be legal advice specifically regarding the request for a resolution involving Hood Communications.
Would the committee like to go into executive discussion for attorney-client consultation?
Yes.
Supervisor Runyon, second by Supervisor Merlino. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.